This is Rudy.
This is Flick.
This week we're talking about the passing of the great Neil Peart from the band Rush. Their drummer, the drummer's drummer, has passed away this week. We're talking about that here on the Left of the Dial podcast.
Yeah, all right. This one you may well know, you may not know it, and if you don't know it, I really don't know where you've been.
You forgot? Forgot the magnetism of Robin Zander or the charisma of Rick Nielsen?
That's kid stuff.
It's just come up to 5:35 a.m. Kommen Sie bitte und listen to Kraftwerk.
I don't know, man. I kind of like Van Halen.
Well, yeah, Plum, you do. And you know why you do? Because corporate America is shoving something down your throat and making you believe it because that's what they want you to believe. I mean...
Okay, buddy. I was just trying to cheer us up, so go ahead. Put on some old sad bastard music, see if I care.
That was Big Yellow Taxi by Joni Mitchell, a song in which Joni complains that they paved Paradise to put up a parking lot. A measure which actually would have alleviated traffic congestion on the outskirts of Paradise, something which Joni singularly fails to point out, perhaps because it doesn't quite fit in with her blinkered view of the world. Nevertheless, nice song.
How about the tunes? I want you to want me. The dream police. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Your mama's alright. Your daddy's alright.
I get by because the people who make a special effort to shop here, mostly young men, who spend all their time looking for deleted Smith singles and original, not re-released underline, Frank Zappa albums.
Gang. Yes. I mean, look, you can play an E pentatonic scale at 100 miles an hour till somebody's ears burn off. You can learn that, right? But finding the tangents within the framework, therein lies the artistry, man.
God made your ears. You didn't make them. You gonna argue with God's ears? If it sound good and it feel good, then it's musical. So play it like I say play it. From the top.
That was Sweating Lunatic Iggy Pop, part of our Tuesday night punk pack, which is climaxing at midnight with Madness. This is Norfolk Nights with Alan Partridge, and we're in the middle of Super Talk. Super Talk!
So the big news from the week, or at least the biggest news of the week, is the death of Rush's drummer, Neil Peart, which is a pretty big deal culturally, certainly for a man of a certain age, shall we say.
Yeah, somebody that, I'm not going to pretend, that I'm the world's biggest Rush fan. Most of the time that I spent listening to Rush was probably between the ages of 8 and 10, and that isn't to no way say that I grew out of them or anything like that. I always came back to them. They were always something I was happy to go back to and listen to and enjoy. But I'm in no way an expert on Rush, but I do like them very much. I know you feel the same way.
Yeah. I think Neil Peart is so just he really is synonymous with Rush in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Because everyone knows his technical chops, his competence, but they also know he's the lyric writer, having that the musical mastery, lyrical mastery of the kind he had, having those in the same dude, like that's really what Rush was the union of those two, and he really was the embodiment of that union. He really was.
Yeah, and it's interesting. A week ago today, we actually almost had, I mean, it was said jokingly at the time, but we had a somewhat lengthy discussion about Rush, and it actually felt like it could take over the entire show, which isn't to say, that I don't relish the fact that we have this opportunity to talk about Rush at length now. It's unfortunate, but obviously, I don't know. But a week ago, we were doing our Songs of the Future playlist, and New World Man was on my playlist, and so it was something that has definitely was definitely in my thoughts to begin with, going into this year. And it's unfortunate that it coincides with this with losing Neil Peart. But yeah, Neil Peart died on January 7th, which was quite a while before it was announced. It was announced on Friday,
right?
And he died at age 67. Now living in Santa Monica, California. Of course, grew up Canadian. Rush was one of the, like to me, I love Canada. I love Canadian bands. Rush is certainly one of the biggest of those, and one of the biggest. Never really got the credit that they deserved for being as great of a band as they were. I don't think they never got to be one of the cool kids. Never really accepted by the critics.
Right.
And I think wrongly so. And just kind of lumped in with a bunch of stuff that they were way better than.
I'd never thought about it that way, but there is some truth to that. They definitely sort of did get lumped in with the Meathead stuff. Yeah, you can't lump Rush in with the Meathead stuff. I do think it was a little pretentious, but it was not. It could not be accused of Meathead stuff.
Yeah, and to me, not pretentious in the way that often other proggy sort of bands are. Prog is often very off-putting to me. Rush was a little bit more. It was intelligent, cerebral, but not so pretentious, not so off-putting. I'm
not sure they were totally accepted by prog people, though. Like to your point earlier,
probably because of that. Because I don't think they were. They weren't Emerson, Lake and Palmer,
right?
And they weren't Yes. I think they're somewhat akin to Yes, but also, like they started more along the lines of the Who, and I think I think it's like if you combine a band like Yes and the Who, maybe you get Rush, and maybe that's why they're more accessible to me, because I'm not so into Yes so much, but I like Rush. And I have to say this, as far as being one of the cool kids, I think there's a lot to be said. We talk a lot now about how prevalent covers are. Everybody's doing covers. I think there are all kinds of bands that would have been covering Rush songs had they been able to play them with any sort of
right.
That's where they are pretty inaccessible, because you got to work your ass off to play a Rush song, and most bands don't have those chops. And I think a lot of bands, if they did, they would probably cover Rush songs, and you would see that a lot more than you do. But most bands cannot really deal with time signature changes and things of that nature. It's not very. And the thing about it is, we're talking about this a little bit before the show. Even though that is the case, that they could hold their own with proggy bands and would do things, do songs with time signature changes. They were really as DIY as anybody else. Like they weren't trained musicians. They didn't go to Juilliard or Berkeley or any of those places. and learn those chops. They learn them just by hard work, just by sheer work ethic.
That's true. Going back to your earlier point, I know Ween has covered Rush live before, but I can't think of anyone else who has.
Yeah, it doesn't happen very much. I think maybe Foo Fighters covered something.
Yeah, probably.
I don't know. Maybe I should look that up.
Nobody even tries doing like jokey acoustic covers and stuff. Like nobody even does. You know what I mean? Like anybody can pick up and do a solo acoustic rendering of anything. They don't even try Rush. I don't even think ska bands try Rush.
Yeah, so Foo Fighters covered Tom Sawyer, but I want to say I'm not sure if I'm familiar with it or not. I think maybe I am, and I don't think I don't think it's like the full effort. Like I think it's sort of knowing that we're not really going to pull this off, and I don't know. I'll have to go back to the tape on that one.
I've never thought about that topic before, but it's amazing how many people think they can cover Prince, and they almost all fail. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All right. Mm-hmm. There you go. I just found a way to get Prince in this week. Are you excited?
There you go. Ding. Yeah.
All right. Well, now that this has me thinking, I went straight to Spotify to see how many tribute albums there are, and there's only one, and it's by all professional musicians.
Yeah,
which is pretty amazing.
Yeah, it is going to be one of those things that it isn't going to be the garage band isn't going to cover Rush, and the most fledgling indie bands are probably not going to do that. But if the songs were easier to play, I think you'd see a lot more of that, because I think there's a lot more people in bands out there that spend time listening to Rush than playing Rush, considerably more.
Yeah, interesting. Well, when you're I never got to see Rush play live. I was too young, I think, and I think Moving Pictures is like 1982.
I think 81.
81?
I think so.
Yeah, I would have been 11 years old. There is no chance I was going to get to go see them. I really wanted to, though. You also got to remember during that era is when the Bob and Doug McKenzie Take Off with Geddy Lee was huge.
Yeah.
During that period, I mean, like, Geddy Lee was famous. He was like, you know what I mean? Like, they really were massive. I wish I'd seen him.
Yeah. And I remember that, like when I was a kid, one of the first TV shows, well, maybe the first TV show that I could ever say was my favorite TV show. And now I'll say The Muppet Show was first. And then after that was SCTV. So being a big SCTV fan, I was pretty excited about Geddy Lee's appearance on a Bob and Doug McKenzie record.
Yeah, that was for as far as novelty records go, it was very entertaining. It was huge. They really don't play it anymore, I guess. I don't know. I'm not around usually where people are playing lots of holiday music, but I don't know if would anybody I don't know if the kids necessarily are missing Neil Peart like the old dudes would.
I don't know. I mean, he's always going to have the influence. He is a hugely influential drummer. Glenn Koch of Wilco, hugely inspired by Neil Peart.
Yeah.
he's always going to have that. Like going back to the Bob and Doug McKenzie thing.
Yeah.
One of my favorite ever tributes to Neil Peart was on the show Freaks and Geeks. Jason Segel's character on Freaks and Geeks had dreams of being a drummer like John Bonham or Neil Peart or Keith Mooney. Those were his heroes, and inspired by Neil Peart, he always wanted to add to his drum kit. He wanted to have a bigger, a drum kit as big as Neil Peart's drum kit. And there's one episode that starts out, and it shows him with Spirit of the Radio playing, and it's as if he's doing everything just as he wants to, but he has headphones on, and then it like cuts to a shot away from him, and you hear the actual sound of the drums, and he's playing horribly, but then then it goes back to the headphones, and it's the song, and it's just and there was always the idea too that like he was maybe better at actually building up the kit than he was at getting better at drumming. But that was always one of my favorite.
I know exactly what you mean, because as soon as I saw that kit, every time I would doodle draw a drum set, it was always to imitate that. It was always to figure out how many layers of rototoms you could fit in or whatever goofy configuration, just because of that. Like, he really was the master of that drum porn. If there is no, I don't know if that's a word to the community. Like, Neil Peart really was the first drum pornographer in that regard, in which it was incredible eye candy to look at the drums. Even better than Kiss, I think. Even better than and actually, he wasn't trying all that hard for a while there. But he made the drum set actually kick ass. The actual drum set kick ass.
Well, if there are drum fetishists in the world, then he's their guy, because he had the kit. He had the ultimate kit. And there's certainly no topping that. Going back to the work ethic thing, though, another thing that I think is really interesting about him is, when at a point where he could have been very content to just be regarded as one of the greatest rock drummers of all time, he trained with jazz instructor Freddie Gruber, and learned a whole new technique based on jazz drumming.
When was that?
Oh, this was in 1994. Okay. And you trained with him, and then developed a style. Like, his style was to actually use the same grip on both hands. And actually, he would drum with the butt end of the stick too, because apparently, when he was a kid, he would always break the tips of the drumsticks, and he didn't have money to go and buy new drumsticks all the time. So he, like, when the sticks would break, he would just start drumming with the butt end instead of that, and then he'd start just doing that all the time, just drumming with the butt end of the stick in the same grip of both hands. And so then, in the mid 90s, then he just, I think, just maybe got more into jazz or more inspired by jazz, and just wanted to develop that style of drumming. And then that became how he drummed. That he totally reinvented himself as a drummer because of it.
Yeah, and they never had the big album to sell that through. You know what I mean? They never had that.
Yeah.
They were always the tours are really where they did their best stuff, I would say, in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
Man, they were still bringing it. None of those live albums from the aughts are bad. None of them.
Yeah, when I have time, I will delve into them more. I still go back to I go back to moving pictures more than anything else.
Yeah. Certainly the 2112 Overture and Permanent Waves, I would say, need to be in your orbit.
Yeah, but I still like, I'm a very much a compact song sort of person. Limelight I absolutely love Limelight, and one thing that I always I think misinterpreted was the line in Limelight, I can't pretend a stranger is a long-awaited friend. And that always kind of sounded cold to me, like this guy doesn't like his fans or whatever. And the more I know about Neil Peart, the person, he's an introvert. He has a very similar personality to my own. So I should have, given him more of that benefit of the doubt, because like, as an introvert, knowing that he's an introvert, I totally read that line in a different way. Like I get what he's talking about. Like putting myself into that spot, I get that line, but kind of misinterpreted it as being sort of cold. But I love that song. I love Tom Sawyer. Who doesn't love Tom Sawyer?
Right.
And and Fly By Night and New World Man, we talked about a lot last week.
Yep. I think you're not going to have a more complete album from them. Maybe Moving Pictures in 2112. Permanent Waves. I understand Tom Sawyer. If we're just talking about Neil Peart, Tom Sawyer is probably the high watermark for like, just if you want a quick way of convincing other people why he's an alpha, that's the way to do it. With Sawyer. But like, I don't know, Spirit of Radio, I think is pretty wonderful too.
Yeah.
Definitely up there in quality in terms of anything with Moving Pictures. If you're gonna, we'll throw some stuff up on our playlist. Some of the mid to late '80s stuff, the Power Windows, Big Money is interesting, but Mystic Rhythms from Power Windows is really good performance by him. I think their last album with Mercury Records was Hold Your Fire. I think it was. And that's got Time Stand Still with Amy Mann singing on it. And I don't know if we want to go here or not. I'm more than happy to drop this topic. But one of the things that, Neil Peart developed over time was he became more restrained with time. He didn't feel the need to fill every single moment of space with a display of technical mastery. Like I think he started to lay off a little bit more, and that's really when I think he was really coming into his own, where the like maximum firepower wasn't brought out for every song. Like there was some subtlety to it. Time Stand Still, I think, is high on that list of subtle stuff by their standards.
Yeah, well, so that era of Rush, like I'll delve into that more. That's an era that I've maybe shunned a bit because I'm not into the synthy. I don't like the synthy Rush like I like the rock and Rush.
Yeah.
But
they switched record companies, and so Presto in 1989 has the song "Show Don't Tell," which I think is like one of the last classic Rush songs. After that, it goes to "Roll the Bones." "Roll the Bones" is where I took a 10-year hiatus.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, Time Stands Still. I think an interesting trivia question because of the Amy Mann thing. That's a little known fact. And I'm a big fan of Amy Mann as well. Great songwriter. A great career that even included working with Rush. But
now that you mention it, she's known for being a songwriter, but really that vocal performance is pretty good.
Yeah.
Like, she may not be like the most vocally gifted, but what she's got mastery.
Well, yeah, no, I'm not saying that to take anything away from her from giving credit to her vocals, but her greatest strength as a songwriter, because she's great at that. Not that isn't to take anything away from her other abilities, but she's a great songwriter.
I'm sorry,
and that's what I think of her as.
I have to go for a hot take here and I've got convinced from her cover of "Drive" by the Cars of how great a singer she really is.
I don't say she's a great great songwriter as a way to detract from her singing ability. She's a double threat, but her, I think, strongest ability is as a songwriter, because that she excels at, like, that's it. It's, I take your point, but I'm not in any way saying that she's an inferior singer.
She was able to take a Benjamin Orr Cars song, a totally just like, yeah, fuck you, disinterested. She was almost able to out Benjamin Orr. That's an unbelievable skill. But anywho,
I have nothing but props for Amy, man. Nothing.
Yeah.
But yeah, go. So I do want to go back to the rocking Rush though, because yeah, he drummed the shit out of those songs, but I still think tastefully so. Like, in his mind, I'm sure Keith Moon was the standard bearer, and rightfully so. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Like, I don't really feel like those songs were over drummed or anything like that.
This is a tough thing to talk about. It is, because this actually has like I don't to politicize. It's not the right thing, but I think we were saying earlier, I can't remember if it's before we started or not. We were talking a little bit about how not bluesy they are in these.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
well,
how
there's only one example of them really taking a stab at the blues, and we were talking about this before the show. So they did a covers album where they did a lot of great covers. Like, I put their cover of The Seeker on our playlist, and that's one of the great covers on there. They do a cover of Crossroads, and that's where you can kind of hear what they might, and I'll stress what they might sound like if they're a blues band. And that wasn't really playing to their strength. Like, they weren't, they were good at the technical aspect of that, but they didn't really have like the bluesiness to it. Right. And I mean, it's very much a take on Cream's Crossroads. It is in no way going back to the roots of that song and going back to Robert Johnson. But you can kind of hear, and it's more to do with Geddy Lee's vocals, which are fine, but they don't really hint at, like, bluesiness.
Yeah, the drumming, again, for me, the word restraint, to me, great drummers are usually, that's to me how you would distinguish them. And I think Neil Peart didn't go for that. I think he went for bombast, and I think he made a case for about as good a case for bombast as you can make. But again, over the course of his career, he did start doing some different things, and he started to play some more nuanced stuff. As far as being like king of the bombast, king of the rewind that so I can hear the drums, like I could think of very few songs in the world that would sit and just rewind the same section over and over again just for drums. Almost all of them were him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it really, really unparalleled at that. And that was when they were in their commercial prime. And after that, they tried some new stuff, and some was great and some wasn't some wasn't. But he always got better. I remember reading or seeing an interview with him. It might be the documentary you're mentioning, where they asked him, like, aren't you worried about playing moving pictures night after night? And he's like, I really had to go practice. Like, I really had to work very hard to be able to play that stuff perfectly every night. Is, you know, like, because that's the other thing I think people forget about them is, like, Tom Sawyer, I know they could bring it and I know they could play together live, but that was a studio creation to some degree.
Yeah. Well, yeah, he said, and I don't think we've mentioned the documentary actually in the context of the show.
Oh, okay.
But so there is an excellent documentary about Rush called Rush Beyond the Lighted Stage that came out in 2010. And it is excellent. It is one thing where, you know, Rush definitely was off my radar a bit for a long time. And I saw that documentary when it came out, and it's really great. It really shows how they were huge rock stars, but they never acted like rock stars. I don't think a day in their life.
Right.
And it's really interesting to see them and get to know them as people, other, you know, beyond just what's on the records. But anyway, going back to Tom Sawyer. Yeah, I think the thing he said about Tom Sawyer is he was always happy. Like, he always felt that was the most difficult song to play, and he was always happy when he felt like he got it right. And he always felt like that was a challenge to get that one right on a nightly basis.
It's got to be physically exhausting.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting too. He became a drummer. Like, the reason for a lot of how he, the person that he became, when he was a kid, he couldn't really play sports because he just couldn't physically do it. You know, like
right.
And so instead, you know, he read a lot, and he, I think, always wanted to read every book that was possible to read, and learn how to play the drums. And so it's interesting, yeah, that somebody that wasn't athletic in any way kind of made athletics of drumming. You know, played an instrument that took a certain amount of athletic ability, and the way he did it, especially.
Yeah, that's interesting. Have there ever been any bootlegs of him? I've always wondered about this. Where the vocal melody comes from. So if Neil is writing the lyrics for these songs, certainly he has to have provided a guide vocal for Geddy Lee at some point, right?
Yeah. Well, and he knew how to play guitar, but I don't know how well. I don't know if he would record demos or if he would just write the lyrics and they would kind of come up with the music. Do they have any writing credits on the song, or is it all him?
So I'm not going to answer that question until you listen to a dumb story. Sorry, Shaggy Dog story, but it's for Rush. I won a carton of cigarettes on a bet when I was in my freshman year of college at the University of Iowa. It was a carton of Newport Lights, which is what I was smoking at the time. I know that's a very fascinating detail for everybody, but Neil Peart gets music writing credit on only one Rush song that I know of, and it's ironic. It's YYZ.
Okay, YYZ.
Well, I'm sorry, YYZ. YYZ. So YYZ's an instrumental, and that's the only song he gets musical credit on. So I'm wondering if maybe that was his guide vocal, or something. Maybe he gave them a guide vocal that got used as a piece of the music that just didn't have words. I'm desperate to know why he didn't sing, because he wrote lyrics. Lyrics are, none of them are that weird in the context of fit into his songs. He had to have some sense of melody too.
Well, I don't know that it would be easy to sing and drum the way that he drums at the same time.
Well, that's what made me think of it. Is you're saying how athletic his performance is. Maybe he really could not have sung. They couldn't have been the band they were, been a real live act who really could deliver if he sang, which just makes Geddy Lee that much more impressive.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I'm gonna go with that. Geddy Lee has that songwriting credit because he probably came up with the bass part, and maybe it started with the bass part, but okay. So since we're on the subject of trivia, I have one bit of trivia that there's no way you would get the answer to, so I'm just going to say it out there. But anyway, so Neil Peart, prior to being a member of Rush, was in a band called Hush. So that's not a trivia question, because I wasn't expecting you to get the answer on that, but I had to throw that out there because he was in a band called Hush as well as a band called Rush.
Did they have any of the same like logo look? Because that Rush logo that's made out of block lettering was the best graffiti of the 70s was Rush logos. Like only the coolest or baddest boys of the class of 77 were out spray painting Rush on boxcars
with that pentagram.
Yeah. They never spray painted the naked dude, of course. But they always spray painted the Rush and the pentagram or the block letter Rush. God, that was good.
Okay, and here's another. Well, here's a trivia question. I got to figure out how to phrase it though. Okay, I'm gonna make this a two-parter. Okay, so there is only one founding. There's only one member who was in Rush at the end who was a founding member. Who was that?
I'll have to just say Geddy.
Nope, it was Alex Lifeson.
Really?
Yeah, and this is weird because it's like Alex Lifeson and Geddy Lee grew up being best friends, and so just you naturally assume that Geddy Lee was always in Rush. There could have never been a Rush without Geddy Lee. But Alex Lifeson is the only continuous member of Rush.
Interesting. I did not know this.
Okay, and the original bass player went on to be in another band that I bet you could guess in like 3 guesses.
From Canada in the 70s?
Roughly. Yeah. Yeah, I guess so.
Oh no, I'm on the spot. I'll never succeed at this.
The song that you would know by them was probably in the early 80s, I'm thinking. It could have been late 70s, but it's probably early 80s.
Tell me.
Are you giving up already?
Yes, of course.
I was hoping you'd just throw out at least one guess. It's Red Rider.
Oh, I would have never gotten that.
Oh, okay. I would have thought maybe if you're just going to run through Canadian bands.
I was going to guess Loverboy.
Aren't they from Vancouver, though?
I don't. Are you asking me if I know whether or not the Loverboy is from Vancouver or not?
Well, maybe not. I'm thinking...
all I can take. I can't take any more.
I'm thinking Loverboy's from British Columbia anyway, but maybe not Vancouver.
All right.
but no, Red Rider. And it wasn't Tom, Life is a Highway, what's his name?
Cochran.
Tom Cochran. Wasn't him. It was like somebody named Jeff Jones or something like that.
Lunatic Fringe.
Yep. So there you go. That's our Rush trivia segment.
Yeah, I haven't read anything. I'm pretty sure they all knew that Rush was never getting back together long ago. I think Geddy Lee had some solo record or something, didn't he?
I don't know. That I think is a good possibility. I'm going to let you look that up though, because we found last week that when I type, you can hear it.
Well, he did have a solo record in 2000.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, and Rush called it a day 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. So he's done nothing since. And let's see, Alex Lifeson. I think Alex Lifeson got arrested once at a hotel in Florida.
Well, you better back that up with facts. I think that's possibly slander if it's not actually true.
I would never do that. I remember I was absolutely dumbstruck that he would do something like that. Hold on. Oh, yeah. What's up? 2004, he was arrested. Oh my gosh. Lifeson is not his real last name.
Oh, yeah?
It's Zivojonovic. Very Slavic. Yep, 2005. He was arrested at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel in Naples, Florida, with a physical altercation. I didn't think of him as a big tough guy, but you live and learn.
Well, you never know. You never know what kind of situations one can find themselves in.
So the interesting, we haven't talked about it yet with Neil Peart, even though he was a pretty, I think we've talked about the political stuff. I did read some stuff of his over the weekend politically, and I think he's, I don't know. I generally dislike right-wing libertarians, and he definitely was one. But he was.
Okay, are you saying he was? Because he definitely describes himself as left-leaning.
Yeah, he was. I think when he was younger. I think, but I mean, he's libertarian. I think generally, in speaking. But I don't think he was any sort of. I don't think he was a bad guy. I don't think he was a bad dude. He was also an atheist, and he was a pretty evangelical atheist, not the worst, certainly.
Well, I have this right in front of me. I had a feeling like this is where the conversation was about to go.
Yes.
And there's a lot actually just on his Wikipedia page about this.
All right, lay it on me.
So he described himself as a bleeding heart libertarian and a left-leaning libertarian. And basically the idea of the bleeding heart libertarian was that he felt fine with paying taxes in order to help other people. He didn't feel like other people should have to suffer, and he didn't want people to suffer, but he didn't have faith in the government to actually do anything about that either. So that's one thing he said. I read a few interviews on this, and another thing, about the 2112. I think the big thing was the British press, especially NME, kind of went wild with that album and the Ayn Rand stuff, and I don't know if this stuff is here, but anyway, there was the reaction that Rush had to that was, they were shocked about that because they went over to England, and people were calling them fascists, and he said that that's something he was inspired by at that time, but that didn't continue to be something that was really a part of his life. But that was something that he was really into the Fountainhead at that time, obviously. But that wasn't what shaped his life, really. That shaped his life for that time period. And I think it's unfortunate, that they got paid with that. But then again, they made the album. They centered an album on that.
Yeah, I normally, when I meet people who are evangelists for Ayn Rand, I usually find that's a short interaction. I just don't have any. It's just not how I don't. I haven't. I can't say I've finished any of them. They're too big. The books are too big. I feel like I've been exposed to those ideas enough. Like, it's just not. If you choose to believe that stuff, I don't think you're evil. Like, I don't think you're bad. I don't think he was bad. I don't think he's somebody who should be deplatformed or anything like that. I just I wouldn't say I share his ideology, and some of his stuff's a little preachy.
But to be really fair, I don't think that was his lifelong ideology. I think that was I think that was a book that he was interested in at that time. From everything else I know, it doesn't really seem like it was as defining. I think the press made that a very defining thing, and
well, free will came. Free will was years after that. So I mean, he was more of that sort. He was like the lyrics of Free Will, the equating being religious with being a puppet on a string and all that stuff. Like he wasn't like an evangelical atheist. I wouldn't go that far, but he was out and proud, which is fine.
Yeah,
it's not a problem.
So the other thing that I was reading somewhere about him was that he actually considered himself to be an agnostic, not really an atheist.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well,
there's a lot out there on this subject, and I and that's the cool thing, but it also shows you how much they did get pegged with that whole Ayn Rand thing. Is that was a topic that interviewers that wanted to revisit with him pretty much the rest of his life, and he that was like where he actually got to maybe clear the air on that subject, because otherwise he it does show you how you don't just want to freeze everything in or preserve every moment in amber. You do want to give people credit for moving on with their life. They might have a bad day or a bad year or whatever, but that shouldn't become their defining moment.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mention it only because I don't know, by the late 70s, how adventurous was it to be anti-organized religion in popular music? It wasn't all that brave, I guess, but in a way it was. He definitely was more brave about it than many.
Well, at the same, it's interesting because most rock bands at that time were probably more into like dabbling into the dark arts, a la Jimmy Page, as opposed to simply being anti-religion or atheist.
Well, the band, it's one of those things. I had a chance to see him probably many times, and I just never did because I never thought I was on the clock. I never thought that there was only so much time left. And then there was, and they were gone.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. I wish I would have seen them live at some point in my life.
Because everybody has always said that they could bring it. Like there was. I don't know when did Emerson, Lake and Palmer break up. Like I think I was like 6 years old when they broke up. Like I never saw them, but Emerson, Lake and Palmer were super overbearing about their equipment and fetishizing the stereo equipment, like just fetishizing the technology in a way that I never thought Rush did. I never thought Rush were like slaves to new technology. I think they adapted it exactly. They like bent the new technology to their sound. That's a pretty tough thing to pull off.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, it again, the synthy period isn't really something I'm very up on. It just never drew me in. But
you mean the late '80s stuff?
When they're moving into the I'm forgetting, is it Time
Stand Still?
Time Stand Still. Yeah, that period. With the electronic drum kit and the synthesizers and all that, Geddy Lee playing as much synthesizer as he does bass.
Yeah, I would say Grace Under Pressure is not everybody. It's not my favorite by any means. There are people who like it. It doesn't blow me away. Grace Under Pressure, I know they did a tour of it too. They apparently there are people who love that record. I've never met anybody who does. New World Man really was the first. I mean, we sort of had. I think I would have conducted myself differently in our last discussion last week of Rush had I known Neil Peart was going to die during the following week. But
yeah, yeah.
That said, New World Man really did represent the end of Rockin' Out Rush. Like this is where that's where they sort of. I mean, you can't call Signals a commercial album, but it kind of is.
No, I mean, it is more influenced by what was going on around them, but not in a bad way. I think they're taking some cues from the Police at that point.
Yeah.
And, that seems apparent. And I think that's a fine album. I like New World Man, Subdivisions. Subdivisions.
It's classic. It's classic.
Yeah, and
it's a little cringy, but it is classic.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's cringy. I think it really gives you some insight into what it was growing up being Neil Peart. Actually, just this idea that he didn't fit in. He was a kid who did not fit in. He certainly made the best of that, though.
Yeah, I don't know. My favorite lyrics for him, I think Spirit of Radio is probably my favorite Rush song overall, just because it's such a great amalgamation of all the things they're great at.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's his best lyrics, but that's a great one.
Yeah, the thing about it is the music is the lyrics are almost like a bonus to most of the songs. Like Spirit of the Radio, you could hear as an instrumental and give you everything you want. Like just the way certain Rush songs have like this engine to them. There's like a movement to them, just sort of a propulsion to them.
I mean, the lyrics of. Sorry, I've got a very active doggy here tonight. Doing a lot of business out in the hall here tonight in mighty Harrison, New Jersey. All right, enough. Spirit of Radio, the lyrics are. I mean, I don't have the person. You can't have the same personal connection to a song about. I guess you can. I don't know. Spirit of Radio it's not really about the radio. I mean, I sort of laughed about it earlier, but the idea, the lyric of all this machinery making modern music and still be open-hearted, like that needed explanation. Like thanks, Neil. We were awaiting your approval to put our synth combo together. It's a little, but it's at the same time. it's a beautiful idea that it's really just a question of your honesty. That's a pretty good lyric to get on the radio in that era.
Yeah.
And that was a pretty big hit on the radio. I remember Spirit of Radio really was their. I mean, the real big radio album was Moving Pictures, and I remember 2112 maybe late night. Sometimes on FM you might hear it. Closer to the Heart you would hear, but really the Spirit of Radio was the first of their like really hard rocking era with that pop sensibility to it. It's pretty tough.
Yeah, well, so let's go back to that verse. All the machinery making modern music.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, what that gets at is that, you know, when it gets beyond the guitars, the drums, the music, the instruments that are a bit more traditional, I guess, and you're getting into, you know, more glossy sort of sounds. But it still comes down to you still got to put your soul into it. And to me, that's what that's getting at.
Yeah. I don't know. I knew we were going to talk about him today, but I didn't. I really, now that I'm sitting here thinking about it, I probably didn't do as much time thinking about the lyrical side of his career as I should have. Because I'm sitting here trying to. He's got some zingers.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and that's the thing. That's kind of, that goes back to what we started with. You know, like I think unfairly maligned by critics. Critics don't tend to like proggy things. They don't tend to like heavy things. That's what Rush was. They were both of those things. It's just kind of a recipe for disaster with critics. But yeah, I mean, I think there's, you know, so since I ended up on this subject, like this is why I get it. Like I have tastes that are often along the lines with rock writers and critics. As far as what I like. And I think critics get it right when they talk about what they like. I think sometimes, though, and maybe this is because, you know, somebody like Lester Bangs was great when he was criticizing people, but he also would pick better targets, too, to criticize. I think the whole thing is that you're better off focusing on what you like than what you don't like. Because critics didn't like Rush, they didn't like Led Zeppelin.
Yeah,
I think you know,
Aerosmith. They didn't like Aerosmith.
Yeah, early Aerosmith. Like I totally get not liking Aerosmith post 1979 or 80.
Yeah, I agree.
But prior to that, yeah, you know, even though they're probably not the best people in the world, but yeah, I mean, if you don't recognize that that's good music, though,
You're right. And do you think we would have Slint without Rush?
Do we have Slint? I don't have Slint. I'm not even sure what that is.
You're not a Slint fan?
I'm not even sure who that is.
Oh my God, that so makes me happy. All right. And I get to introduce you to Slint.
I guess so.
Slint comes from the what would have passed, I think, for in your musical tastes as the Fertile Triangle. I think they're from St. Louis. No, oh fuck, they're from Louisville.
Okay.
This is going to please me greatly then. All right, I will take that. I withdraw the question, sir. But be prepared because you're going to. Slint only made 2 records. They were, I think, a Steve Albini project at first, and I don't even want to talk about it right now because they have some very rabid fans, and if I say that they're like math rock, you know, who knows? may not be able to walk the streets of Louisville again. Who knows? But like that whole math rock genre. Do you think any of that exists without Rush?
I don't know. I don't know what exists without Rush. I just know that
even Slipknot. I think Slipknot. Get Slipknot without Rush.
That's possibly true.
The chops.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know enough about Slipknot to know.
All right. Well, I'm trying to your point about being accentuating on the positive. I think Slint and that brand of sort of the alt math rock, I guess, that's very redeeming from the nerdier parts of Rush. Like, definitely, I think spawned off. I think the band is pronounced Tortoise, not Tortoise. I think they're Tortoise. They're another band who I think would all probably say they're big Rush fans. Like
I'm familiar with them.
There's like an artier take on Rush too, or that I think Rush influenced that I think is going to end up being quite redeeming.
Yeah, and again, there would be so many other bands that I'm sure would be covering their songs if they had the chops to do it, but not many do. And that and that's too bad because I think that's where a lot of people get turned on to older bands. A lot of younger music fans get turned on to older bands when the bands that they look up to cover them, and it's not really something that's going to often happen with Rush.
Totally agree. I am very sad. I'm very sad at his passing. He was with him, like he takes with him. He was certainly the greatest living rock drummer, right? That's an easy epitaph for him.
Well, yeah, he's the greatest living rock drummer, yeah. And up there with. I mean, my favorites all time: John Bonham, Keith Moon, and Pete Thomas, and and those were the guys that I think he looked up to as well, among others. And he certainly had his place among them.
I think he was a Ginger Baker fan.
Ginger Baker too. Yeah,
for sure. It's a big loss. Like he really represents the top of the food chain for a pretty wide swath of what rock drumming does. He really did that very precise, very scientific style that he had was balanced pretty well by some of his more. He didn't have. I don't think he had any funky impulses, but he definitely was not simply dependent on the sort of mechanical precision.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll just close out by saying definitely take the opportunity to watch the documentary. I think that's a really good look into the life to who he was as a person, who Geddy Lee and Alex Lifeson were as people. And it's on Netflix, and just about everybody has Netflix these days. So give that a look.
Yep, I'm rest in peace, Neil Peart. What a really sad thing, and we end up. It's not necessarily it's just something we're gonna have to deal with as it comes out. It's like how many rock gods are of that retirement age and older. It's really we're really losing like the. Oh, this is gonna sound really ridiculous. I apologize in advance, but. The drum set, I think, is the first known instrument in human history that required all four limbs to play. I believe that's correct. I think I got that from a trivia game at some point, but I think it's correct. the first instrument that requires all 4 limbs to play is the trap set. And so the trap set itself is really only a couple of decades older than he was, like, and so if the trap set ends up being as fundamental to music as it looks like it's going to for a long, long time, that thing of the kick drum, the hi-hat, the snares, the toms, and that the rack. When they look back at the early drummers, the early rack players, he's one of those. Like, he's going to be one of those early examples, of it, and he's going to represent sort of a high watermark of the analog technology. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, analog drumming of just pure percussion of human efforts applied to a drum head. He really did represent the top of that. And then during his career, drumming fundamentally changed underneath him. It became electronic. It could be run off of a laptop. You could do mechanical precision. You could write code to do that stuff that he was incredible at doing with his hands. You know what I mean? Like, that level of proficiency he had, people could start to sort of program around. He really does represent the top of the apex of that sort of analog drumming, and the origin of the drum set. He really represents sort of an apex there. He's, I think, very important culturally, just for what he did with that form. So let's talk about, we haven't yet taken any time this year to talk about the music that's been going into our main playlist, our big rotation for the month.
We did talk about it a little bit last week, but it wasn't anything new last week when we talked about it. It was just old stuff that we'd been listening to over the break.
That's true. There has been the first big batch of new releases is out. New stuff from Wire and new stuff from Boomtown Rats. We got to talk about that. Tame Impala, Of Montreal, and then a remix of Beck done by St. Vincent. Those were some of the bigger things I saw.
And a new song by Wolf Parade as well.
Yeah, the new Wolf Parade. I actually think that's pretty good.
Yeah, and Granddaddy. Come back from Granddaddy.
All of which, this is one of those things. I don't know how the music business works in terms of how they schedule, why they schedule, but as far as a batch of new music, these are all very good bands, and they're all got very good stuff. The one I'm most interested in, that I can't believe I like as much as I do, is the Boomtown Rats.
Yeah, I liked it as well. I mean, I love glam rock. It's probably one of my favorite genres, and it's a very glammy song. It could almost be a Mata Hoople song the way it sounds. It's just very much going back to that time. Just has that feel, has the lyrics. I name drops the New York Dolls, I believe.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I don't know if I could put together 12 total for Boomtown Rats, but the stuff that they've done that I can think of that is good is great. I mean, great. Yeah. When they're good, they're great.
Yeah, and this song is called Trash Clam Baby, or is that just the chorus?
That is indeed what it's called. Wire is easily in the most productive phase of their career. This new one sounds a little bit more like their catalog than the last couple have. They definitely, but at this point, they've got almost like half a dozen completely distinct eras in which they're sounded a distinct way. And very few bands make it that deep. They're more prolific than they've ever been. I don't think they've ever put out this amount of music in their career. And I'm surprised at their ability to put out decent stuff in this volume. The fact they're old as dirt at this point, and they're keeping up with the kids on SoundCloud with the amount of stuff they put out.
Yeah, very happy to have a lot of new material from Wire.
Are you how would you rank their eras? And basically, there's only one way to answer. There's either the Mute Records era in the mid '80s or the first batch of punk records. Do you have a clear favorite?
Oh yeah. I mean, Pink Flag's still my favorite album, and that's still my favorite era.
Okay.
The unfortunate thing about Wire is when you go to see them, they don't do old songs. They don't. That's really against their ethos, and it's kind of too bad. It's good to see them anyway, and I recommend it. But that is the unfortunate thing. You aren't going to get those Pink Flag favorites in a Wire show.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look up the playlist of the show I saw. I saw them in San Francisco at the Fillmore with the original four, which is my big, if I may humble brag, that I got to see the original four of Wire. So I was excited about that. It was a great show. They had good material out at the time, so hooray that they have it again. I might be good enough to go see them again. It might.
Yeah. Yeah, they aren't really going to be coming to my neck of the woods, but you should definitely do it.
You never know. You never know. Are you a big fan of Montreal?
No, not like you. I like them fine, but you're the fan, really.
You know what? Someday I want to do a whole show on them. I don't know that day is ever probably. I'd like to do a show about their covers. I would like of all the bands like in the early MP3 era where just you could get anything you want any time of day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If it had ever been recorded, it was up and it was free. There was a time there where getting access to all their live performances and stuff. They were so good. They were so good. And I understand not everybody loves them, but boy, were they great.
The recording quality was often all over the place. Like it was every level of recording quality. Definitely, and I've mentioned this on the show before, but definitely my favorite from those days, the days that you're talking about. Their cover of Lindsey Buckingham's "Trouble."
It's great.
Excellent. It's excellent.
Great. Yeah. I have never gone to see them. I'm going to do it on this tour. I haven't picked where I'm going to go see them. I think they're up and down the East Coast a couple times. So I think this is my year. This stuff is mellow. This stuff is poppier. This is the stuff they probably, if they'd written it in like 2007, he'd be a multi-millionaire. But he decided to go the other way with things, and probably going to die not anywhere near as rich as he should have. This stuff's good. This new stuff is good. I don't know if Outback Steakhouse will be around to ask for any of this stuff to be a part of their jingle anymore, but for his stuff, this is really much more like that era when he was really writing the big pop songs. So I'm happy with it.
So then there's Wolf Parade's new song, "Julia, Take Your Man Home." That was another one that was on my list for this week.
Yeah, can't complain about that. Are you a huge Wolf Parade fan?
I like Wolf Parade. I don't know what level of fandom I have for them, but I like them.
I would put their first record, their first album, or the album this first album on Sub Pop. That Sub Pop album of theirs, that first one, is probably in my top 10 for that decade, for the aughts. And that's saying something. I think of the aughts as having been a absolute golden era for indie music. And I put them right up there. Right up there.
When speaking of the aughts, the other song that was on my like list for this week is the new Granddaddy song, "Rest in Peace," Coyote Condo Number 5.
Not bad.
Yeah, good to have new stuff from Granddaddy.
Yeah, I gotta think. There's a chance there's an audience for that. There's a lot of people who are like influenced by him or by the band that did really well with his influence. I hope he does as well as some of his the people he inspired. So next week we're going to talk about Fleetwood Mac. I think
Yeah.
Is that correct?
What's that?
I just wanted to make sure that's correct because I've also placed in our playlist just a little smidgen of a sampler of some decent Fleetwood Mac covers. You're certainly welcome to join with your favorites. They're a well-covered band. Fleetwood Mac is a well-covered band, and they're one of the few bands with a really good tribute album.
Yeah, they are. Their songs are a bit more accessible. We going back to Rush covers and the lack thereof. But Fleetwood Mac, yeah, they are well covered. Yeah. So what's that?
I look forward to that. We'll talk our Fleetwood Mac draft next week, but maybe it's a taster.
Yeah.
Of the playlist of Fleetwood Mac covers.
So just to give an idea of what we'll be doing with Fleetwood Mac, we'll be drafting. We've drafted before. We've had Benelli drafts. Next week we'll be actually having a fantasy draft for Fleetwood Mac because we love Fleetwood Mac, and so we are going to draft. Not just trying to squeeze 5 songs or whatever out of a band that we don't like most of their catalog. Here we're having a fantasy draft. We're drafting. We'll be drafting 12 songs that we love from Fleetwood Mac.
It's going to take some real skill because we're going to have some rules. You're not going to just be able to grab side one of Rumors and call it a day. We're going to put some rules in place because there's such a huge career. It's really going to be discipline here that wins the day. It's our first draft that requires discipline because of an embarrassment of riches. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
See you next week.
See you next week.